Here. This is the Innsbruck Table Talks for January, our first one out of the gate for 2021, and we appreciate so many people registering and coming to this event. And we are getting started with a supercharged panel discussion. We're talking today about development economics, the making of our counties into hubs for growth and expansion. And we have the very top leaders we could possibly have for this discussion. As you know, we have Mr. Anthony Romanello, who is Executive Director for the Henrico Development Authority. And I was told very strongly yesterday, not really, but I was asked not to read entire bios. But I'm going to cheat a little bit and say a little tidbit about each speaker before we get started. Anthony Romanello, as I said, he is the Executive Director of the Henrico Development Authority. He is also, under the category of little known facts, the author of Random Thoughts, Reflections on Public Service, Fatherhood, and Middle Age. And not for that reason, but I did buy the book. It's on Amazon and it's very affordable. So I would recommend you get the book. I'm looking forward to reading it. So thank you for being here, Anthony Romanello. And we also are joined today with Linwood Thomas, who is the Director of Economic Development for Hanover County. And under the category of little known facts, or maybe you do know this, that Thomas Linwood was voted top young professionals 40 under 40 in Greater Fredericksburg a couple of years ago. So these are the superstars, folks. Garrett Hart is the Director for Chesterfield County Economic Development Authority. He is also the founding member of the Virginia Economic Development Association and an honorary life member of the Southern Economic Development Council. So please welcome our esteemed panel. Okay, so microphones will be muted now and we'll get started with our conversation. And in doing some research on this subject, I noticed that economic development has really changed in terms of its philosophy. That's, of course, not surprising over the last 60 years. But how it has changed and why those changes are significant is what we're going to start off with under the category of sort of defining the moment and what we're really talking about. So it seems as though there are key stages to economic development having to do with structural transformation of an economy, the demographic transition, and a process of urbanization. So I'd like to kick off with Anthony, if you would please, if you would talk to us about those changes and how you have responded to them in Henrico County.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Yvonne, and to the whole Innsbruck team. It's really good to be with you all, and I hope everybody is well. It's a real honor to be on a panel with Garrett and Linwood. They're my heroes. I want hair like Garrett, and I want to be as handsome as Linwood. So hopefully someday I'll hit both of those. And I definitely want to mention Pat O'Bannon is on the call too. Nice to see you, ma'am, from our longtime member of the Henrico Board of Supervisors, and done just so much good for our county and for our region. And of course, my colleague Jane Dufresne, who keeps me straight on all things Innsbruck. So it's good to see you, Jane, too, and the whole group. So, just to start, Yvonne, what I would say is, the business we're in is certainly adapting, and not just what we've seen in the last 12 months, and I know we're going to talk about that later, but what we've seen over the last couple of decades. We're considerably, particularly in Henrico, considerably more focused on redevelopment. While we do a fair amount of business attraction, we are seeing a number of redevelopment projects throughout the county. We're going to see more and more of those, particularly in Western Henrico. You've seen what's happening with Regency, Virginia Center Commons, what's going to happen in the old Best Products site with the Green City project. And my colleagues will tell you about their projects too. And the other thing that we are considerably more focused on is talent development and workforce development. And that became a whole lot more important about 9 months ago when the world figured out that for a good number of our jobs, you can work anywhere in the world. And so the job market, the business environment is going to change very dramatically. And I think we're all in a position of trying to figure out how we can make the most of that. The good news for us here in Central Virginia in the Richmond area is that we've got such a great value proposition, as we all know. It is just a great place to live. And if you can live here in the greater Richmond area and work for a company out of San Francisco or New York or Silicon Valley or wherever, then you really have a great quality of life. So I think those are just a couple of the things that we're seeing in terms of emerging trends.
Okay, great. Thank you. Garrett, would you like to talk to us from the Chesterfield County perspective?
Sure, I'd be happy to join in, and I won't repeat any of the things that Anthony has brought up, but he was dead on all the spots. I will say, I mean, your first question was a 60-year-old traditional economic development philosophy, and then we started talking about structural changes. And mostly when you talk to economists about structural changes, it's moving from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy to a service economy. And certainly we have done that in the Richmond region. But one of the things that I like to point out is we are still America is still a strong manufacturing economy. Chesterfield has the largest manufacturing payroll of any locality in the Commonwealth. We have the largest manufacturing investment in the region. That continues to grow. Manufacturing production continues to be bigger every year. So even though we tend to talk global economy as structurally changing to service, that's not necessarily true. We still focused on manufacturing expansions very heavily. We are still back in the my Keynesian economic development classes where we are focused on that primary dollar. We want to create that primary dollar that's then traded in the community again and again and again, so everybody has a good salary so they can have a good life. Now, with that said, we talk about demographic transition. We have, and Anthony and Linwood will tell you, we are experiencing greater than ever a migration from the north to the south. Those people are moving from the north to the south, and they're bringing their talents with them. As Anthony has said, we are a great location to come live to, and we really are the first stop on 95, where the cost structure changes and the quality of life gets to be more of a southern quality of life than a northern quality of life. We have lots of assets and lots of things to do. So we have the Richmond region together. We have been able to benefit from those structural and demographic changes. And then we've done a good job in our urbanization as well. So I'll let Linwood finish out the thought.
Well, thank you. And thank you to everybody joining us today. I see so many familiar faces. Wish I could say hi to everybody. I will just also note that I miss people. I look forward to getting back to when we can do this face to face. I hope as the vaccine is rolled out and we can all get inoculated that we can do this hopefully by May or June or July. Maybe that's optimistic, but I hope to see many of you again soon. Yvonne, you've set the bar extremely high today through all your social media marketing outlets. I hope we don't let you down. But I will note that anytime you start with Rostov's economic stages of growth, you know you've got to go back to your college economics classes to make sure you polish up on those key principles. But to piggyback where Garrett left off, I'd like to focus on the urbanization component. Anthony and Garrett both touched on some of the other things. I will point you to a book by Henrico Moretti, who is a Cal professor, economics professor, who talks, and it's a 9-year-old book. And I know what you're thinking. I tuned in for Linwood Thomas to give me feedback on a 9-year-old book. Bear with me, I'm going somewhere with this. But at the end of the day, Henrico talks about the fact that people over the next 10, 20, and 30 years throughout the world are going to matriculate to places and regions that have quality health care, workforce training, entrepreneurship, innovation, quality of life, and cost to do business. And we have all of those in the Richmond region. And we're starting to see the fruits of our labor. But as we continue to position ourselves to be a destination, to create this ecosystem, I think we're well positioned to take advantage of this, not just in the short term, but in the long term. So I think the bigger picture is we're just so well positioned for success in all of our localities.
That is awesome. Thank you, Linwood. And thank you for mentioning the whole social media thing, because after I posted a few things across all of our platforms, I have never gotten so much response. I thought, what are these guys, superstars or something? And I thought, it's a shame we can't have autographs today, because you guys are very, very well admired. And that is awesome. I'm so honored that you were willing to come today as a panel. It's just a powerhouse of conversation. And many of you talked, I'm kind of taking notes as you talk. And as you're talking about urbanization and the migration from north to south, is that something that is unique to our region? Because we talked in our preparation about how the county might be related to national growth or even international growth. But what we experience in our area, which I have personally, I'm from the north, and then I talk to so many people who say, I'm from New York, I'm from, Maine, I'm from whatever. So is that unique to our region? Whoever would like to jump in?
Well, I'll start it. No, it's not unique to our region. What you'll see if you look at the nationwide demographics, it's like in the next, and Anthony can correct my number of years, I think in the next 15 years, it'll be 25 million people moving out of the north and into the south. You will see the centers in Chicago and everything in Texas and Dallas remain strong, but you'll see the center of the country decline in population, in the east and west coast increase in population. And most of that will focus around urban areas.
And so how do you prepare for that type of change? That means more people, more jobs are needed, more resources are needed.
But actually, it's we see that as an advantage because as Anthony has said, our business has changed from, I used to go out and chase a company and bring them in, and then we found the workforce. We're chasing the workforce now, and the company's following the workforce. So having people move into our localities and into our region is actually a benefit.
Okay.
And we've got in all of our localities, we've got good slow growth policies. Our elected officials are very focused on making sure that we grow, but that we grow at a manageable rate so that we can make sure that we have quality infrastructure to serve the residents and the businesses. And I think too, we're in a position as a region not just to have this happen to us, but also to be a little bit more of the verb here than the object. We did a social media campaign in December just to see what would happen, targeting companies in California, trying to reach out to folks in California, because if you've read anything about California, there's a mass exodus right now because of their taxation policies, difficulty in doing business. The governor tried to put $250 million into their budget just to keep some of the businesses that they have. And we are happy to help California businesses come to Greater Richmond. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we've got a great value proposition for businesses in the Northeast, businesses on the West Coast where there's high regulation and high taxes. They really don't know how difficult they've got it until they come to Virginia and they see how we do business. I should mention too, Yvonne, with respect to the social media campaign, I really need to thank Peter Larson. I'll be washing his car for the next 2 years for all the shout outs. So appreciate all you did, Peter. And just a quick commercial, if you need a Xerox machine, Peter's your man. He hates that I call it Xerox.
I would
That is
add,
awesome.
I would add one more thing to the population move and the influx. It's also helping us in another way in that Anthony mentioned that we're doing a lot of redevelopment. That redevelopment is funded by our ability to densify the areas and to put apartments and townhouses in those places, because that's the financial structure that makes those mixed use facilities work. And they are financeable and are being done because there's a high demand, because we have people wanting to live that style of life and to move into the region for that style of life. So
Right.
additional benefit.
And let's not
So
forget
we're
one other thing. Let's not forget the importance of that direct flight into LA and how we market that, because I think it's extremely important. We may have a great value proposition to do business, but a lot of CEOs and executives want a quick way to be able to move in and out of a locality or a region. So I think that those new direct flights, I think directly to Los Angeles, Tampa, and then Los Angeles will benefit us a great deal in the long run as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You talk about urbanization and mixed use, and of course, we have the benefit of so many things happening in Innsbruck regarding mixed use. Do you see that as one of that, well, chicken and the egg could be a question, but I've heard about so many changes happening with regards to people coming from the cities going to the arteries that complete our region. And so mixed use, of course, could be part of the reason. But what are some of the other reasons you see where the city was the sort of target for so long, and now suburbs seem to be growing, and the companies that are in the suburbs and in the counties?
I will just speak to the fact that in the short term, you've had the COVID-19 pandemic, you've had a lot of social unrest. And I think, again, short term, I think the cities will rebound, but we are seeing a significant amount of interest in projects in some of these suburban areas. Most recently, Hanover has seen some interest in larger office projects, which is interesting because we haven't seen much interest other than medical office over the last 4 or 5 years. That makes up a majority of a little over 2 million square feet in office that we have. So we're starting to see some of these projects, not just regionally, but some of the northernmost localities in the U.S. Interested in our market, which is flattering. So I think you'll continue to see that.
Well, you sort of touched on it, but all three of you have touched on this, but we've seen globalization, of course, that has been an up and coming thing for many years. But if there is any silver lining to COVID, which is very hard to find, we saw that we did have something in common with the entire world, and that is the pandemic. And so it's changed the way we communicate across the aisles, I think, a bit. Has that changed the way you do business in your counties, the way we respond to the pandemic, but also the way you're trying to build your counties?
I think Linwood can attest to it. And anything. We had our first fly in from around the country, spend the night and do a visit and kick the dirt from a prospect yesterday. It's been the first one we've had probably since COVID started that did the full traditional. We've had a few more, but to do the full traditional, most of the time the visits are virtual these days. We market virtually. We correspond virtually. We provide our information virtually, just as we're doing here right now. This is the format that we live from. But you talk about globalization, and that's moving in a different direction because of COVID. And we'll talk about that in the future. But globalization has been another thing that the Richmond region has been the benefit of. Direct foreign investment in the Richmond region is quite strong. There are over 220 foreign direct investment companies in the Richmond region. There's some 81 in Henrico and 48 in Chesterfield. And that's foreign-based companies creating jobs in the Richmond region and capital investment. So, we're seeing more of that. And we're going to see more of that as even those companies onshoring is when an American company pulls its business back onshore. We're actually going to see that. Plus, we're going to see foreign companies continue to expand in our location because it's our market they're chasing. And the logistics problem that is causing the onshoring is also a logistics problem for them.
And I'll just add, if I can, Yvonne,
Yes.
One of the things that is another differentiator for our region is the fact that we have 4 undersea cables that connect to Europe, South America, and Africa, and that runs from Virginia Beach right into Eastern Henrico, and so businesses here are able to tap into the fastest connectivity ever. And if you're doing business, as Garrett's saying, with our international companies, if you're doing business in Europe or in Africa or in South America, the fastest way to communicate, and this is big data, but the fastest way to do it is to come straight through us. There was an announcement in December. It's probably the biggest news in Richmond's history in quite some time that probably nobody picked up on. And that is that DKIX, which is the German commercial internet exchange, announced a new exchange. And that exchange is in Henrico. It's also up in Hanover at Pixel Factory in Hanover. That is one of 4 exchanges in the United States. The other 3 are Dallas and Chicago and New York City. And what that does is that connects us to the rest of the world at the fastest possible speeds. And this is again for companies that are moving big data. 80% of the world's internet traffic still runs through Ashburn and Loudoun County. It will continue to do that, particularly domestic traffic. But if you're doing any kind of international movement of big data, you're going to come through us before you get out into the Atlantic. And so there's some real potential for us as we're talking with our companies that are here, as well as those international companies that Garrett was talking about with the potential that we've got. And it's not just Henrico and Hanover. I don't mean to, Garrett's got a substantial data center presence and he'll get more just as we do in Henrico.
Yeah, I do have to point out that line enters Eastern Henrico as it's leaving Chesterfield.
We're not competitive at all. If
No.
not at all.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And that's a good, I thought we'd bring it up, when we talked about what's going good. Data center activity is extremely strong for all of us, for all 3 of us, because of that line that runs through all 3 of the counties.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to be good for us. Primarily, the good thing about that is the jobs are really good and the capital investment is huge.
Nice. Linwood, did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, sure. Let me try to tie it up in a little bit of a bow. What I'll say is that the U.S., as many of you know, makes up almost a quarter of the world's GDP. But looking at this 2 different ways, there's still 75% of that in the world economy that we are missing. So what we have had to do is pivot as localities to make sure that we're also working to attract global and international companies, because there's a huge market share that hasn't been had. We do that 2 ways here. One, we work with their existing industries to help them export, because there again is a tremendous opportunity for them. But then when we're working with companies who are looking at making investments in the greater Richmond region, more specifically Hanover, we've had to better understand customs and practices. When they come to visit, we don't necessarily run a site visit with a European company or an Asian company the way we might run one with a US company. We also, at least in Hanover 2 years ago, we didn't even have a website that translated different languages. It was just in the US, but we were going on international marketing missions, but it would die there. So we've since been able to track, now that we have our website geared toward many different languages, we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest, and we can track that data through Google Analytics. So I think it's twofold. One, helping our existing industry and how we help them grow internationally, and then how we also work to attract international companies. The one thing that I hear the most is that international companies want to do business in the US. Many times they're scared. They don't know the processes. They don't know how to potentially get their business off the ground. And that's where our regional partnerships come in that can help them navigate those.
Well, this is great information, because, I wanted to talk about, we had this in our lessons learned, and we'll probably segue back into some of the things that you just mentioned. But the reason I wanted to put this in there is because I was listening to a commercial you've probably seen it. It's online teaching, and this company has been promoting their online teaching for years, and completely online. And, in years past, I would think, wow, how do they sell that? Kids want to be around other kids. And I thought, now there's a company that probably was okay with the pandemic. I don't mean that in a flippant or terse way. But I'm just saying that I'm sure that company grew a lot. Do you have lessons learned through the pandemic that, God forbid we have to do this again, but something that you ended up having to do? And you mentioned something earlier, Anthony, but something that you decided, okay, this is going to work now, and we may have to do it in the future.
Yeah, well, I think first off, we're still learning those lessons, and there's a lot more to be learned between now and when all of us get a vaccine, whenever that is. Hopefully by this summer, if not sooner. I mean, I think that the big lesson for me, and I think what the business community has shown, is that the more nimble and the more adaptable they are, the more likely they are to survive. And we've seen. And not just chain businesses, not just the big businesses, but some of our small mom and pop businesses who immediately were able to move to online ordering. Restaurants doing takeout that traditionally weren't doing that, figuring out how to deliver it. How to reduce their menu so that they're profitable. How to seat people outside even in January to try to deal with social distancing and get really creative. I mean, this is America, right? So people are going to figure out a way to get things done. And I think there's so many good examples of that. My wife and I ate at the Grapevine restaurant on Sunday, which is not too far from Innsbruck. For those of you that know it, all the best Italian food is not cooked by Italians, and that's true at the Grapevine too. But I know, Yvonne, it's weird. But anyway, but they've moved not just to outside dining, but they've built a porch. They've got heaters. They've figured out how to continue to stay afloat even in a really challenging time. And we've seen a number of businesses that have done that. The key thing right now that we're focused on is getting to the summer. Getting folks through this next wave until we can all get vaccinated, and how we bridge folks into, because we know a lot of businesses are really teetering right now, and how we can get folks through the winter into the spring and then to the summer, when hopefully we'll see whatever this the next stage of normal looks like.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Linwood or Garrett, would you like to speak on that?
Sure. Well, there are a few things that come to mind for me. And I think, to Anthony's point, this will be a case study across the board for the next 100 years. I know Greenspan used to use the word conundrum, and I think we'll be learning a lot of things from this for many years to come in many textbooks, not just the health side, but the economic side of things. A few points that we're hearing in the local community and lessons learned: having a resiliency plan, as Anthony mentioned, being able to pivot. I use one example of a local company, Specialty Coating and Laminating, which made plastic products for the food industry. They were able to pivot to make plastic gowns during this process. And their ability to be able to pivot and work across multiple industry sectors has insulated them to some degree. So that ability is important. And then the other thing is access to capital. I mean, I think businesses have learned a critical lesson that, and we understand a lot of mom and pops businesses don't have but so much capital, but the ability to quickly be able to get to that capital to help keep them afloat is something that long-term, and as we learn these lessons, that will be beneficial as we move forward.
Great information. Would you like to wrap that part of it up, Garrett?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak on that. As Anthony says, we are still trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Linwood is, and I am. We're spending money interviewing our existing office clients, and interviewing our developers, and interviewing our mixed-use developers on what they think is going to come next, and what the things that they've learned, so that we can see what's going to be sticky and what's not going to stick. I will tell you that I am starting to see the developers across the board position themselves for a comeback. They're starting to show their signs that we're going to get past this and buy it. But I think that the biggest thing that is, and it's a secondary learning issue. We gave away close to $7 million in grants and things to our local small businesses that were affected by COVID. And as part of that, you had to put in at least enough paperwork so that we could defend ourselves against the federal auditors when they come back and say, how did you spend our money? It was a tremendous surprise to find out how many small business owners do not understand simple financial reporting, accounting issues. We had to actually go to almost 4 rounds of grants and training to get enough people to get enough applications to give the money away. And that was driven solely on the fact that the people didn't know where their 1099 was, or what a 1099 was, or didn't have a performer, couldn't tell us what their budget was, and things like that. And we're coming out with a series of training seminars for our small business division that'll start probably next month, that everybody's welcome to join. We partnership with Microsoft and Intuit and to train people on just basic understanding of what a set of books should have in it and how it should go. I have to end on a happy note. Above that is, I agree with Anthony. The creativity and the initiative of the small businesses to figure out a way to take care of their employees and deliver the same goods to their customers has been amazing. But the lack of knowledge of basic business and accounting skills was it was a surprise and a shock.
Yeah, I'm sure. But, that's actually part of the next section. Garrett, while you're talking, I had read about the 3rd round of funding that your county Chesterfield was able to get through the Chesterfield Board of Supervisors. So as part of these seminars, is that part of how you're using the funding?
Actually, the funding you're talking about, the 24 million that the Board of Supervisors authorized for the Economic Development Authority, does not have anything to do with COVID. That's strictly funds for the opportunity to purchase land and develop it, which a week later, we bought Upper Magnolia for 13 million, using almost a little more than half of that money to position that property along what will be the next outer ring, the expansion of the Powhite. So we are like Henrico and Hanover and even the city, we are short product. We're extremely short product. And we have to move out way ahead. It's a long-term play. Upper Magnolia is only going to come on board in real life when the Powhite is extended, which is a 5 to 10 year discussion at least. So the full development of that property will be out. It's kind of our next Meadowville development. It's the next big property for us. But we're going to try to use the rest of that money they gave us to buy some more short-term opportunities. But we are doing a really good job of being a first choice community for residential. Residential is encroaching on a lot of large parcels that could be used for job creation and capital investment. And we need to get a hold of those and position them that way before they are encroached upon residential, and which pretty much keeps them from being rezoned just because of the outcry of the trees have been there for 50 years. We want them to be trees for another 50 years. So that's the goal of those funds. Those goals are fun to identify parcels in the county that are big enough to keep us competing for large international projects, identify them, position them, and get out ahead of our residential growth.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. Well, Anthony, I want to kind of turn to you. And if you would please talk to us about the large expansions and changes. Pat, every single table talks, Pat tells us about the changes at the airport. And as Linwood pointed out, that's an important change. That's an important expansion in order to be able to attract those big businesses. But you had so many wonderful successes during the pandemic. Would you tell us about them?
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. We did have another very good year, but I'm always careful in that to talk about if you look at manufacturing, if you look at professional services, data centers, a very, very strong year for Henrico, a very strong year for our region. But what you're seeing is dramatic double-digit hits in jobs and investment in the hospitality, hotels, small retail, and so I think it's important to give that context because there were it really is a tale of 2 years in 2020, and what we're currently seeing. A couple of things that we were especially proud of last year was ASGN coming into Innsbruck, right on Cox Road. They're from Calabasas, California. They're a Fortune 1000 headquarters. They own Apex, which has been in Innsbruck for a number of years, and they are moving their headquarters to Henrico. Kroger Mid-Atlantic is moving to East Shore, just down the road from Innsbruck, and bringing about 75 people from the Roanoke area. And Kroger Mid-Atlantic is responsible for the 5-state territory for Kroger. Garrett mentioned foreign direct investment. Rose Home just came into Eastern Henrico, a very small investment to get started. They are a Danish company. I always get excited when people say a Danish company, but it's not the pastry. They're from Denmark, and they are in the wind energy space. And so they are a critical supplier to Dominion in the Commonwealth's initiatives to expand our sustainability efforts. And in particular, they'll be supplying those gigantic windmills that Dominion is putting out in the Atlantic beyond Virginia Beach and beyond. So we're really happy to have them here in the Richmond area. Temper Pack has also announced an expansion. They're a manufacturing company in Eastern Henrico. They do recyclable packaging. It's really good for cold storage. When we toured their plant, we asked them if they were a supplier for Amazon, and they said no, they couldn't be a supplier for Amazon because they were too busy already, and Amazon would just bring them to their knees, as we all know, with as much ordering as we're all doing, especially since the pandemic. Our front porch has become the latest retail store with everything coming in the way that it does. So a pretty substantial year for Henrico and for the region. But again, we continue to do everything we can to work with the restaurant, retail, hospitality sectors to try to get them on the other side of this.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because we do have to think about those folks in hospitality and the restaurant business. They have really suffered. But Linwood, I'd like to, if you would please talk about your 300-year anniversary that I guess you celebrated on some level in 2020 in Hanover. Do you have big plans for 2021 to do that?
Well, let me say this. We printed 2,000 cups last year that had Hanover's 300th anniversary on them, and we were going to celebrate that at our business appreciation last year. But in the sake of being fiscally responsible at the local level, we're going to take an indelible marker and put a 301 on the cup, and we'll be handing those out this year for our business appreciation reception. But I did think I couldn't let Anthony share all of those amazing things without talking about a few of the big wins that we've had over the last year as well. And again, we can't discount the pain and suffering that a lot of these businesses are having, but Hanover has been somewhat insulated through this pandemic due to our logistics and warehousing and supply chain announcements that we've had, and those industries have remained fairly busy. I will say right before the pandemic hit, we had added 1,950 net new jobs, which was on pace to shatter our largest year on record. And over the last 5 years, again, right before the pandemic, we were in the top 10% of all localities across the Commonwealth. Now, I know my friends to the south are probably in the top 2 or 3%, or had been in the top 2 or 3%, but that is big for Hanover County. I call us the little engine that could. We had $30 million in announcements last year. Our Wegmans project, which we are still trying to get across the finish line, we hope to have that finalized in February, along with our speculative building program has taken off. We've got a little over 1 million square feet of space coming out of the ground. Most of that's being leased up, and I'm sure Garrett will probably tell you the same story, is being leased up before the roof has been put on. And we've got about another 2.5 million queued up over the next 18 months. One thing I'm extremely proud of too is that we're growing our annual average wage, because no two jobs are alike. I think it's important not that we just create jobs, but they're good jobs. So over the last 2 years, we've increased our annual average wage by about 10%, because we do lag behind the other localities in the Richmond region. So there are a few things that, a few successes that we've had. It's hard to keep up with these big guys to the south of me, but we feel like that we're holding our own.
Well, thank you. And, you know, as we talk about all of the good news in each county, I sort of go back to the name of our topic today, and that is the making of counties into hubs for growth and expansion. So how does what's going on in your individual counties, how does that, or does it, I guess, affect and help the national scene or across the state? I guess we should start with the Commonwealth of Virginia. And then does it affect growth across the country as well?
We could get into a very deep philosophical conversation about how each of us makes our money. The nation and the state of Virginia make their money on income tax and business taxes. Localities make their money on capital investment. Okay.
Okay.
So that creates some situations where we're chasing one thing and they're chasing another. But create situations where their incentive packages are based on salaries and ours are based on capital investment. So it is what I call a clinky dink. It's a clinky dink in the system. It's how we do. But we as localities are seeking as dense a capital investment as we can get in our commercial properties to offset other taxes from homeowners and residents. Along with that, we're seeking higher paying and better jobs to improve the quality of everybody's life. And it's those higher paying and more jobs that the state and the nation are interested in as far as an income scenario and so forth. I mean, and if you look at the state of Virginia, and if you look at the job creation that's going to occur in the state, it's going to occur here in the Richmond region and along the Golden Crescent from Northern Virginia to Hampton Roads at a much accelerated rate compared to the rest of the state. So we do have significant impact on what's going to go down, what's going to occur in the state as far as revenue.
Okay. Anthony or Linwood, would you like to expound on that?
I hate to simplify it, but as long as at the local level and at the state level, we continue to create good jobs, we continue to bring in capital investment, those taxes, both at the state and local level, help pay for good programs and services, whether that's transportation or programs that are needed at the state and local levels. As long as we're doing our job in regard to adding those new capital investments, those new announcements, those new jobs, we are helping support programs at the state and in some cases with the tax revenue, the federal level.
You know,
Okay.
and I'll just add, Yvonne, Garrett said earlier, and he's right, that the companies are going to be chasing the employees. I mean, I think a couple of things that leave Virginia a little bit vulnerable right now. And I think what the Commonwealth does for economic development is very good. And the Economic Development Partnership under Stephen Murray's leadership is very strong. But a couple of things worry me right now. One is our income tax, which is relatively low for states that have an income tax, but there's a number of states that don't have income tax. And now that 60% plus of jobs can be done anywhere in the world, that's going to hurt us. The other thing is that, we keep our fingers crossed every legislative session that there isn't a conversation about giving up right to work. If we lose right to work in Virginia, that's the ball game. That is absolutely a differentiator for us in growing companies and in expanding the companies that we have. One thing I'll mention that I think sort of wraps it up really nicely. We toured T-Mobile's new facility last week. They moved 800 jobs from Western Henrico to Eastern Henrico. They're adding 500 jobs on top of that. This is a customer care center, average wage of just under $60,000 a year. They moved into the Sam's Club that is in it was a Sam's Club in the White Oak Village Shopping Center. They needed to expand and they needed all their staff on one floor. We asked them, isn't the virus going to impact your operations? And they said, no, as soon as we can, as soon as we get people vaccinated, we're going to have all 1,300 people in this building. But, that one is one of those great projects where we added jobs in the region. They told us that the vast majority of their people live within a few miles of where they're going to work. We saw a redevelopment of a retail big box. We're all going to see more of that. You've seen what Garrett and Chesterfield done in the old Cloverleaf Mall. That's a phenomenal redevelopment. And we're going to see more and more of that throughout the region as the retail world changes. And so to the extent that we as a region and we as a Commonwealth can adjust to new economy jobs and be clever in our land use regulations so that we can reposition buildings for what the private sector needs, I think we are going to continue to be successful. But we are, there's no doubt that we are absolutely impacted by national trends, international trends when it comes to the business community.
Well, you mentioned the White Oak facility and that growth, and we all read about it. So as you think about ways to look at economic growth, I think about the counties that you are all leading, and they're so expansive, and they're also very different from one end of the county to the other in terms of socioeconomic. So is there a price that anyone pays for this growth, or are you able to sort of broad brush it across the county so that everyone benefits?
Well, I think what you're looking at with the economic development incentive agreements that we do, they're post-performance. And so there is no price. If the private sector doesn't deliver, then there's no incentive. It's important that we can put a good package on the table to attract the company or to help them expand, but we're not going to risk taxpayer dollars in that process. So in that regard, and Linwood and Garrett are the same way. In that regard, we're not putting anybody at risk. We're just positioning our localities to be successful. So let me just put you at ease in that regard, that you're going to see further economic development, but it's going to be in a fiscally sound way.
I think, Yvonne, your question was that, and then a little bit deeper about economic development and growth and its impact on traffic, environment, schools, and so forth. Is that where you were headed, I think?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Good. All right, well, you got the three wrong people on here to have that conversation. Okay, our job is to get it, grow it, and do it. Economic development sees a tree as a building waiting to happen, okay? So it's our job. It's our job to be the guy in there trying to make growth happen. There's plenty of planners in the room that are going to tell you how to do good growth. There's plenty of environmental engineers in the room that are going to protect the environment. There's plenty of traffic engineers that are going to make them build the roads that they have to build to get their trucks and employees in there. Somebody in the room's got to be trying to close a deal, and
Yeah,
that's what the three of us are there for.
Right. But the work that you're doing, doesn't it enable the other work? Even
It
if
does.
you do, yeah.
It finances all of that, all of the
Right.
above.
Right.
It
Right.
finances all the above. And I'm pretty flippant with it, but we support good growth, and we want those jobs in a place where people can get in and out easily. The trucks can get in onto the major. 95, we are all the great children of 95 when it comes to economic development. 95 is the single most important piece of economic development infrastructure on the East Coast. So the closer you are to 95 and the closer you can put a business to 95, the better off you are. So we're trying to use that. All of us are trying to use that as best we can. But no, our goal is to use the money we make on growth to support that growth and do a better job than we did yesterday on educating our children and providing a quality of life.
Right. Do you want to tackle that one, Anthony?
I agree with Garrett.
With one caveat, I'd like to add, if we have any elected officials watching in Hanover, I do not look at a tree like an economic development project. A comprehensive plan notes that 70% of the county will remain rural, and we get that. So they drive the policy. Garrett, I love you, but I had to add that caveat. And the only other thing I would add is, and Anthony really hit the nail on the head, is we're very conservative in Virginia as a whole, and the localities, mind you, we're all AAA bond rated. So we look at deals and the return on investment on a much shorter time frame than some competing states, which hurts us in some regard, but we don't throw taxpayer dollars at a project if it doesn't make sense. And then to Anthony's point, they don't get those dollars until it's a rebate, not an abatement in Virginia. So we negotiate that up front. So we're very conscientious of our taxpayer dollars in the Commonwealth as a whole.
Well, I'm glad you wrapped that up properly, because I was just looking out for the electability of each of you, since you're such superstars. I just wanted to make sure we had a good platform for you to become, governors or whatever it is. I think the world is your oyster. I do want to say that we are coming up on about 6 minutes left, and I got so excited about talking with you guys, I forgot to ask people for questions. And we do have a question in the chat room. What has been the impact to the improvements made at the Port of Richmond? Who would like to tackle that one?
Go ahead, Garrett.
Well, you should do it. Anthony, you've got the #1 user of the port lumber liquidators in your county, followed closely behind with me with Sabra, bringing in chickpeas and tahini. The TEUs at the Richmond port have gone to what was when we started talking about the transaction of the city giving the facility to the Port of Virginia, 14,000 TEUs to we're over 48,000 TEUs today. So that's a huge amount of growth. It is helping to continue the pressure that we see for distribution and warehousing and logistics facilities in all of our counties. I think one barge takes 90 trucks off the road. So, we're doing 3 a week now, I think. And we've got one reefer, which if you guys don't know what a reefer is, it's a refrigerated barge where you plug everything into refrigeration. So it's been a tremendous success in both our existing companies pushing stuff out as well as bringing things in.
Okay. Any other questions? This is your moment to ask the panel for whatever it is you would like to ask them. They're right here for you. I do want to mention, Anthony, that you do have someone who would like to buy your book, but they want it to be autographed. So that is, a condition of the purchase. So just so you know.
And it's just proof positive that any fool can publish a book. So, totally
Actually, it was a
excited.
good book, but I did not pay for it.
All proceeds go to a good cause, not to me. Garrett, Garrett was talking about the port, and I'm glad you clarified what you meant when you were talking about reefer, because wasn't what I was thinking about. So appreciate you explaining that for the group. You know, one thing, can I just mention something real quickly, Yvonne, as you're
Yes.
looking for questions? One thing that our colleague Leonard Sledge started back in March is a regional group of basically anybody who's involved in business and economic development, that at one point we're meeting 3 times a week, and Garrett dubbed it the regional tent of caring, which I think was really accurate, because it became kind of group therapy, and we did a lot of really good work as a region working with our business community. One of the outgrowths of that, one of the things I'm most proud of, is that we reestablished the Small Business Development Center here in Central Virginia. We had lost that about 5-6 years ago. That's back in place now. It's sponsored by Virginia Community Capital. The entire region is supporting it financially, and that's going to be a huge help to our small businesses with PPP loans initially, and then in the long haul and helping them succeed. So that was one of the other lessons learned, to go back to your earlier question, and one of the things that's going to serve our region well in the long run.
Awesome. Any other wrap-up comments you'd like to make?
Yvonne, I have just one.
Oh,
One of the things that I've noticed in my capacity is that I know that people are moving here from New York State, New Jersey, the West Coast. And yes, I love the plug for the West Coast flights, because if you don't use it, you lose it. But yes, that is one of the reasons people like, obviously, if there's a nice direct flight and they are moving here. But the impact of that is people from coming out of state to our state and to our communities because of the low tax rate and quality of schools. That's what I'm hearing from all these folks. But one of the things they've been doing is they'll buy a piece of property in an older neighborhood, and they literally tear the house down and rebuild it, or they take a house and expand it dramatically. And I've just been so pleased because their housing stock is getting pretty old. And so if you wanted to know what real estate agents can do or might want to do, and that sort of thing, is the people who are moving here are bringing a lot of money. You know, their house in the other area in New York or California cost a lot, and they want to get a nice house here, and they see, oh, I like that neighborhood, but they'll tear the house down and rebuild it the way they want it. So it improves their quality of life with the real estate that they're improving. So that's just one more thing, or one more level to think about.
okay, thank you. Do any of our speakers want to wrap up? I do see a comment in the chat about the website and contact information to get information for growth and population and job industries. I would suggest that each county has its own website. Let me know if I'm wrong, gentlemen. And there is information about those very topics, because I went to all 3 websites. And of course, the state of Virginia also has a Virginia Development Authority. But anything that either of our speakers would like to say.
If you want to know about the region and have the demographics, grp.com. Chesterfield is chesterfieldbusiness.com. Jennifer does a great job of having put together all the statistics for us on a regional basis and markets for all of us. I would like to close just to let you guys know, from the private sector side, as well as the public sector side, I have been selling the Richmond region for almost 30 years now, and including a couple Cap One buildings that helped design and build in Innsbruck, where you guys are. I have never seen the activity from out-of-state spec developers that I am seeing right now for the region. There are more developers from across the country under contract in Chesterfield County than I have ever seen before, evaluating and kicking every piece of dirt we have. We are seeing a resurgence of office, retail, and hospitality. It's slow, but it's different. The office is not a 7-story office building. It's a 3 or 4-story office building, or 2 or 3 of them in a mixed-use development that also has residential and retail. The retail is that way as well, or unless it's grocery anchored. There's currently, this has been a very spotty recession, and the hospitality industry has taken the biggest hit of it, and our small individual businesses, and we're doing everything we can to keep them alive. But manufacturing, logistics, grocery stores, and warehouse loads and have been killing it, and that has been positive for all of our revenues. This is not a revenue recession. It has not become a real estate recession yet. If it keeps tarrying on, I'm worried about it being there, getting there a little bit, but not yet. I'm starting to feel like there's a lot of pent-up demand, and we're going to see a bunch of things happen as soon as we get a clear plan and a clear supply of vaccines. I think Virginia's going to come out ahead, and the Richmond region is going to come out ahead of Virginia. So
Awesome. Thank you. I do want to mention I put all 3 websites in the chat for Hanover County, Henrico County, and Chesterfield County to learn more about each county and the work that they are doing in their counties through the economic development authorities, so that you can learn more as well. And as Garrett mentioned, Jennifer Wakefield is also on the call. The Greater Richmond Partnership is also, I can put that website up as well. And I just want to thank our speakers and also apologize that I was not able to play The Love Boat as I was asked to. And that's sort of an inside joke, but there is absolutely no joke or no mystery why the North is moving south, because the work that you guys are doing is outstanding. And I'm so honored that you would come today to be a part of our conversation, but also to be able to work and live in Henrico and in the Greater Richmond region. I lived in Hanover for a while. In fact, I lived in Chesterfield for a while too. Wow, I've really moved around in my short time here. Not really, I've been here a long time. But anyway, all 3 counties are just outstanding. But we're so happy to have you here. And thank you so much. I see a lot of thanks going into the chat. As we wrap up, I do want to mention that next month, we have the Secretary of Health and Human Resources, Dr. Daniel Carey, is coming on February 18th. You will receive an invitation for that event as well, and he will dive straight into COVID, the trajectory, the vaccine, his vision for the future, and that will be a very, very interesting conversation. And then in March on the 18th, we have Chief English, Colonel English, who is the new Henrico County Chief of Police, and he's going to talk about the work that he's doing in Henrico as well. So we have a lot of dynamite speakers coming up. You can register for Innsbrook's Biggest Loser, a virtual event on innsbrook.com, and that kicks off on February 2nd. So we're trying to get the wind at our backs, maybe, or under us or something like that, and really push forward so we can all gather again and be a part of all these wonderful events that we've been used to going to. I learned a lot today. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You are outstanding, and I understand why everyone loves you.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you for
thank
having
you.
Thank you. We appreciate it
Thank
so
you,
very
Vaughn.
much.
Another great job.
Thank you. All right, everyone have a fabulous week. Stay well, keep your mask on. We're not out of this yet, but it's going to happen.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you.
Great to see everybody.